Let It Die was one of the most unique games I've ever played. It was utterly ruthless, and even leaned into some of the worst aspects of humanity, like the rich get richer, and how people at the top so often prey at people at the bottom, doing so all the while making jokes and of course being silly, never taking the journey too seriously. Hats off to Uncle Death for that. And honestly, I think this is a wonderful analogy for life. In a lot of ways, life is utterly unfair, downright cruel at times. But at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that we all have to climb our own hellish tower. Maybe you have people in your life that are hell-bent on getting in your way. Maybe you don't have the resources or materials that other people have. Or maybe you invested in the wrong skills/gear and have to re-level an entirely new skill set just to get past the next hurdle. Restarting all over again, more or less. Even though all of that can be a lot, one thing will always remain the same. The tower's still gonna be there, and whether it's today or tomorrow, you're eventually gonna have to climb it in order to get to where you want to be. It reminds me of a passage of a book I adore. The book is called 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, and there's a moment in the book where a therapist is talking to one of his clients, and he gives him this analogy of standing on a lake of ice, and it shattering and you falling into it. The shock would no doubt rattle you, and if you let your initial panic rule you, you might very well sink and, well, die. But if you take a deep breath and you let it settle, perhaps you'll have the courage to look around, and if you're lucky, you might see a person standing a few feet away. But here's the catch. But what if that person that you've seen said these simple words and then turned and walked away? No one is coming to save you. What would you do? What feeling fills you? I think for many of us, especially the crazy people amongst us who are actually able to climb the tower, you probably didn't buckle under those words. But instead, we're set free because of them. You see, I don't think it's about fair versus unfair, reasonable versus unreasonable, but instead, what the hell are you going to do about it? And no, I don't think it's as simple as pick yourself up by your bootstraps. But instead, it's just the pure reality that it is on you. And only on you. At the end of the day, you're gonna need to make a choice. It doesn't have to be immediate. You can cry out and curse the world itself for giving you such a bad hand. But sooner or later, you're gonna see the tower has not moved an inch. Some people throw themselves at the problem again and again, but in real life, I don't think that's actually how it works. You usually don't get to play for free or try for free. Every time you try, it costs something. But then how do you overcome your tower? Well, the more time goes on, the more I think it comes back to this simple concept. Leverage. Instead of having to invest 10 and possibly only getting 1 out, what would happen if you spent 1 and got 10 out? This, my friend, I believe in no short part, is one of the fundamental keys of life. You see, there are these skill sets that you can learn that just have more innate leverage than others. And in Let It Die's case, it can be something as simple as, what weapon can I easily level up the entire way up the tower and answers most of the problems I find myself in? That's why the flail was one of my favorite weapons. Great range, decent combos, unfortunately a little bit of hang time, but nothing that you couldn't manage. Not to mention how good the hockey stick was. Granted, a little harder to level. There was a gap in there. Anyway, and of course, even though I hate to admit it, the Kamas also falls into that category as well. In real life, this could be as simple as learning the skill of marketing and sales, which every business would highly value and probably pay you quite handsomely to leverage for them. Or even something like coding would probably work in the same way. Any skill that if you learn, result in you being as deadly as showing your back to a hater, resulting in them turning into a mindless drone, going for a power attack, and you being able to counter attack. A tried and tested combo. You can use that simple strategy hundreds of times to get many kills. You put 1 in and you get 1,000 or 10,000 out. Pretty good deal. And don't even get me started on the bosses. These towering and ferocious hunks of muscle and steel that would eviscerate you in literally 1 shot, resulting in them being kind of these titans of fear in our minds, at least at the beginning, becoming absolutely nothing after you are forced to kill them upwards of 100 times for their special medals. Bobbing and weaving and slipping punches that would end you in certain death. Shedding every single drop of fear, fighting them again and again. And of course, I think the same could be said for the fears you have in your real life. A lot of those fears are simply an exposure problem. Don't get me wrong, some fears can definitely leave you reeling and can leave you in pain for a long time. But if you have the guts, the more you acclimate yourself to that level of pressure or risk, you can in turn increase your accuracy and decrease said risk. It's funny how so many of these things reflect our journey through the Tower of Barbs. Even things like the Forceman, where preparation made the fight so much more manageable. But ultimately, things that used to work with the first Forceman didn't necessarily work the same way again. More on this a little bit later. Everything from the fun of leveling up armor to seeing what kind of color pattern and evolutionary mold it has, to the badass weapons and the areas that we eventually unlock through events, to the overall style of the entire game. Truly impeccable. And honestly, if anyone's interested in a game that has a similar style that's absolutely goated, I would highly suggest two games, Shadows of the Damned and Killer is Dead. Very strange, very weird. When you beat them, you're probably gonna have a lot of questions, but ultimately, totally worth the wild ride. And they're single player, so you'll be able to bang them out real quick. Let It Die has such a special place in my heart, and I assume yours as well. But, and this is a pretty big but, I really didn't like the way the game ended. I mean the endgame and support for the game. The Tower of Barbs to me is one of the most beautiful love letters to overcoming adversity that was ever made. Constantly challenging yourself to find new methods to solve the problems at hand, an angle you maybe missed, a tip that could be applied to make your experience just a little bit more buttery smooth. A thing that if you only took the time to invest in and level up could be the make or break between you getting a little higher. But the more the game went on and on, it was right around the time of Tengeku, I believe. To me, it all went astray. It felt like it was becoming less about overcoming adversity by learning the foundational things that make you succeed at anything in life, to playing a game that felt rigged from the start. I remember the challenge I set for myself when I played the game so many years ago, that I wouldn't spend a single penny in this game to show that you could do it without spending a dime. And we pulled it off. But then, not long after, they introduced something called the Forceman. And at first, we were right on track. If you leveraged mechanics that you probably had forgotten about, like the expedition system, and slowly started recruiting gold mushrooms that had really powerful effects, or playing PvP mode, or even just challenging yourself outright, rinsing and repeating again and again until you get your clear. But to me, the most tried and true method was just stockpiling a resource that you might have not been leveraging. And it was great. It gave value to those items that honestly sometimes felt valueless. But then, for whatever reason, that was all thrown out the window, and you could no longer use your investment, i.e. gold mushrooms, to increase the probability of you succeeding when doing this special event, and the Forceman had some of the coolest looking gear in the entire game. It wasn't a complete deal breaker, but it was kind of a bad feeling of what was to come. You see, instead of being able to build up a resource like that, allowing people who weren't quite as grind heavy to get access to this fun thing, it made only one option really available. Option 1, level up your gear to an ungodly amount, later forcing you into Tengeku, which has another problem, or the other option, get a really powerful decal. Now, some of you might have long since forgotten, but essentially a decal was just a supercharged perk point. The TLDR for Let It Die's monetary system was this: death medals could bring you back once you die, in a game that was constantly trying to kill you. But the only issue with that, a lot of the time is when you died, it was because your armor broke, because there was durability to armor. So you reviving yourself just meant you were likely going to die in a split second again, making death medals just not something people really tended to use. Maybe if you were fighting a boss fight and you were able to get one more hit, maybe. So instead, the developers hyper invested into their other monetary practice, which was the mushroom stew. Essentially, think of like a gacha system, but 10 times worse. You see, in gacha games, you're relegated to 3 possible characters you can get that are 5 stars, or 4 stars, sorry, and then you get one main 5-star. And if you lose the 50-50, you're guaranteed getting it again. So you have like a barrier of possibilities to get it early, but ultimately you'll get the one that you want within a certain amount of investment. So let me ask you, what would happen if the developers continued to add more and more decals, inflating the ever-living hell out of the pool? Well, it would make it damn near impossible to get the build or decal that you want. And what if they started heavily amplifying the decals or perks that facilitated you having an armor set built and a weapon fully leveled up? It was this massive spike in power if you were able to get the stars to align, and oftentimes forced you to play a way that you had no intention playing, leveling armor you just didn't care about or whatever. But some of you might be noticing a pattern. To get better gear, you need to climb higher up. But if you want to go higher up, to Tengeku, you tend to need a really good decal. So it created this kind of cannibalistic loop that hyper-incentivized people who were willing to spend money. And then they added 300 more floors. Sorry, I didn't mean to suck my teeth like that, my bad. And please, don't get me started on Tengeku. Every enemy was rocking the most absolutely absurd broken armor set that they told us, yeah, these were people who died up here, and they left that behind. Yeah, right. Okay. I still get messages today of people saying, hey, by the way, you just killed me up there. And I'm like, I haven't played the game 5 fucking years, okay? And I haven't made it past the 300 floors. Psycho. And again, 90% of the haters up there were rocking the highest resistant armor for ranged weapons, so you couldn't even tickle them with that. And of course, when they spawned in, they had like max rage, so on and so forth, and just ugh. Even people who love the ever-living hell out of the combat were always in large agreement with me that this was terrible. It made all the melee weapons feel largely redundant, and only a very, very select few were able to survive. And a lot of times they weren't even strong because of the melee weapon itself, but because of one of the rage skills associated with it. The only people I ever knew who climbed that high were people who spent either a tiny bit of money, or got really lucky, or dedicated like 5,000 hours to grinding the game and memorizing every weird statistical advantage you could possibly get, which, I mean, honestly, the thing I want to say is, man, if you took even an ounce of that dedication to anywhere else, I'm sure you'd thrive. But that's where I kind of want to push back, and it's kind of the point of this video. So much of the original base game of Let It Die is this beautiful love letter, again, to adversity and overcoming it and constantly pushing through and finding solutions wherever you can. But then it got all corrupted, gross, and wonky. And honestly, maybe this is an analogy for if you do make it to the very tippity top of the 0-1%, it's fucking hell, and you gotta pay to play, and what a nightmare that is. The reason why I give this game a little bit of grace, despite me feeling like it has a pretty severe and extremely toxic monetary practice, is because the base game still embodies this beautiful idea of a journey of pushing through great adversity. This is all to say that as I look back at the game and its subsequent community, I have a boundless amount of love for it, and of course all the weird people that inhabit it. And I'm looking at you, not the mushroom lady or death. Yeah. And as far as the monetary practices, it's definitely disheartening, but hey, maybe you didn't see it that way. But for me, as much as I love the Tower of Barbs, I feel like it's high time I start focusing on my own personal Tower of Barbs to climb, overcoming all the challenges that present itself, and of course, as I tend to do, I'll try to lend a helping hand whenever I can, so that the people who might follow me up don't have to suffer so much. I'm not sure if I'll cover Let It Die 2, or 3.0, whatever it is. Still kind of have a knot in my stomach about the support ending for Let It Die, the base game, and also Death Verse, just being a weird choice overall. But what I do know is I'll do my damn best to help you if I can, but please don't hate me if I'm a bit late or a little busy, because, like I said, it's high time I conquer my own towers, and I hope you do as well, my friend. Thank you for giving me a single second of your day, and ultimately allowing me to offer you a helping hand to not have to climb the tower alone. My name is Grinn. If I'm lucky enough to see you again, thank you kindly, and goodbye for now, my friends.